Just let a few more of the participants come in and we'll get started in just a minute or two.
Sounds good.
My pool guy's not here till 10, so we should be good.
Tell him to log on. He might, then he'll really find out what you're up to.
I'm just like the Zoom monster. He's like, I don't know what this woman does.
She just sits in front of her computer all day long. Yeah.
I think it's important, but I don't know.
Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to Book Talk, The Future of Food as Female, Reinventing the Food System to Save the Planet with Jenny Stojkovic. My name is Jennifer Hicks and I am the Director of Alumni and Stakeholder Programs at our university. We're really excited to gather today to hear about this very important and inspiring topical book. Before we begin, I do want to pay respects to the Indigenous peoples, elders, and ancestors who stewarded and cared for the nature and the people who lived on the land where our university is located today. At the university, we have made important commitments to reconciliation, and I invite you to learn more about this work online and in person the next time we can get together on campus. A couple of quick reminders, housekeeping. This session is being recorded and the link will be shared with you after the fact so that you can share it with your own friends and colleagues. And if you have questions at all during the session, please submit them using the Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom, and we will feed those to the moderator and at the end of the session. Now I'm delighted to introduce you to the author of The Future of Food as Female, Reinventing the Food System to Save the Planet, Jenny Stojkovic, and the moderator for today's event, Marcia Woods. Jenny is a multi-talented executive leader in food technology, investment policy, and advocacy. She's the founder of Vegan Women's Summit, a global platform of more than 40,000 women founders, investors, and advocates dedicated to building a kinder, more sustainable world. In addition to this, she built her career as a leading advocate for tech policy and innovation in Silicon Valley, working with tech giants Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and others. She's a frequent contributor to international media outlets, and she is a TMU alumna from Business Management 2013. Welcome, Jenny. Marcia Woods is the CEO and co-founder of FreshSpoke, an innovative online platform that gives retailers a convenient way to source foods, beverages, and home goods from hundreds of brands and arrange delivery to the door, all as one transaction. She also launched one of the first digital design and marketing agencies in the GTA back in 1997. She's since gone on to found 2 more startups, but it is her passion for food and technology that continues to be the driving force behind FreshSpoke. Welcome, Marcia. So without further ado, I will hand it over to the two of you to start this discussion, and I look forward to listening in.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And hi, Jenny. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you too.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know whether you can see me, but I know you're in California. I'm in Ontario, and I did not plan this, but I literally have a snowstorm out my window. So, and that is planned directly for you today. So there you go. So before we get good. So before we jump into our talk, I think that what I'd like to do is give the audience a little bit of background on your amazing book. And I have to say personally, I've actually read it cover to cover when I first got it. And then I've started reading it again. And I've recommended it to, I have a tech startup, as you know, I have about 85% of my food founders are women. So every time I am in front of them, I'm continually saying, you've got to pick up this book. It's just so inspirational. So let me tell the audience a little bit about the book. So as a background, The Future of Food as Female features a collection of cross-cultural stories from 15 CEOs, venture capitalists, scientists, and trailblazers who have reinvented our food system and are continuing to make efforts to save the planet. From plant-based to cell-based innovation, artificial intelligence and policy making, these women are leading impactful industry and changing the way we approach food today. This book shares their stories of advocacy within food tech and empowers future generations to learn, innovate, and change the world. So of course, now I have a few questions of my own, but in addition to my own questions, once we're finished our little bit of a talk, I'm going to turn it over to the audience because I'm sure they've got loads of questions for you as well. So if you do have a question in the audience today, make sure that you put it into the Zoom link in the Q&A function that you'll see at the bottom, which is just being highlighted for you right now. So just to get us started, I'm really curious about how this book came about. So why now? Why are you writing this book now?
So I've been very fortunate to have an amazing career in Silicon Valley and been at the forefront of what innovation and tech means. And so most of my career early on was in the post-2008 world. And I really saw what it means to build transformational innovation and what it means to build a startup and what that kind of change looks like and how hard it is. And so combining my personal passion, I've been vegan for almost a decade. I was really excited to see finally the future of food is a real conversation that is happening in mainstream outlets. Back when I went vegan, nobody was talking about things like plant-based innovation, cultivated meat. These were very insider terms. And so in 2018 or so, I started to see mainstream outlets picking it up. And slowly but surely, this has grown into one of the most promising areas of innovation on the entire planet, most impactful area of innovation for climate. And we know that there is no future for the planet if we do not reinvent the way that we eat. So why not now? This is the word that we need to get out there for everyone, particularly women.
Yeah, for sure. And why not now? I think that's key. And it's interesting because they suggest that by 2040, even conventional meat producing companies like Cargill and Tyson, and you look at these companies, they're looking at plant-based innovation, aren't they? Like we actually see very traditional industries waking up to this reality that we need an alternative source of protein.
Exactly. And what we're seeing right now from everything from climate change is affecting every continent in the entire world. Both, Canada and the United States saw some of the most severe drought of all time, affecting so many of our crops. 45% of all crops that are grown on the planet are grown for animal feed. That's a staggering statistic that many people are not aware. And so when you think about the constrained resources that we are now having with the drought, with the changing climate, we need to start rethinking how we're using those resources as they become more and more scarce. And so the most logical thing we can do is, rather than grow the plants to feed into an animal, to slaughter the animal and feed the person, is there a more direct and efficient way to get that protein into people?
Yeah, for sure. And on that note, I think that's something that you really tried to dig into in this book, which I find fascinating, is these are women that are tackling huge, big vegan challenges. So, I read stories about individuals researching and developing sustainable and nutritious proteins. Rhianna Lynn of Journey Foods, I think her story was incredibly impressive to me. She highlights that complex middle of CPG. I'm in the CPG business, so I found her story really interesting. And then there's this whole other cohort, peppered throughout the book, that have all of these incredible innovations and a passion for really converting the individuals away from traditional meat and dairy towards a more plant-based diet. So lots of challenges there. If we look at the book, what do you think is the biggest challenge, or is it not on the pages? Is it somewhere else?
So we know, and most human beings that you speak to, they know that there's something that's not right with the way that we're eating. This is every person that's joining and listening to this call today. Everybody knows there's something a little bit off. There's something a bit that is just not sitting right with people, because the way that we've industrialized, the way that food is produced on this planet, primarily the $1.4 trillion meat, dairy, and eggs industry, it's becoming unsustainable. So the most challenging thing we have right now is we need to take that discomfort and feeling that there is a problem and empower people with a solution. And that's the entire point of this book. That's why I focus specifically on women, because 93% of consumer food purchases are made by women. So by targeting that specific demographic. We are targeting the people that are making those day-to-day food decisions for the households across the world. That is the most challenging thing we have, is getting people away from, oh no, there's a problem and I don't know what to do, to here are the solutions we can build and work on together.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that struck me is, the range or the continuum of women's stories and journeys that you had within the book. And what I found really striking was that I loved how you dug into the background of these women. So as soon as I got about halfway through the book, I thought to myself, I get it. I know why she's doing this now. And so I want to validate my conclusion with you. But my feeling was, when you write about sort of a conventional entrepreneur, they kind of just, they just jump right into the story. You went back right into the beginnings of their lives in many cases, and really narrated and story told around how they came to being in this mission. So as women, what do you think is the difference? Why is it that we as women are taking these challenges on at a greater volume than, say, men?
So to your first point, the representation was the key piece of this book. So telling that early childhood story, whether you're growing up in a slum in India, staring at a hole in your ceiling and looking at the stars every night, or growing up in, inner city Baltimore, every woman and every person should know that there is a path for them to become a visionary and a change maker. And so the more we tell the stories, the lesser known stories of women that have done this, the more we can have young girls and young men look up to these people and see themselves in their position one day, right? So that's the representation piece. But in terms of your question, I do believe, and my findings from the book, and even, Harvard does tons of reviews around, gender leadership, women do tend to have more of a mothering and nurturing way that they look at the planet, even if they're not moms themselves. I think about half the women in the book are mothers. Half of our BWS community, which is about 60,000, those women are mothers. They do feel a responsibility to something greater than themselves and something that they want to care for and nurture. So I think that's why women tend to be drawn to this type of socially impactful and food or climate related work.
So much more purpose driven, it comes out of a point of purpose, not necessarily for profit first. It's more purpose first. Is that what you would suggest?
Yeah, and statistically, that's correct. So women are 8 times more likely to start a company for mission purposes than financial gain. So we do know across the board that those are real numbers.
Yeah, for sure. So how do we get investors interested in that? Because it all hinges. You have to have cash, right? That the cash is king. There's no question about it. As a startup, everybody needs cash. How do we make this a thing? How do we make this people more aware of this?
So there's 2 points I'm going to cover. First, let's look at what it means to be a woman that's raising investment right now. So last year, only about 2% of the total venture capital investments in the entire world went towards women founders. So that's bad. That's really bad. It was about 0.5% to women founders of color, right? So that actually started trending downwards during the pandemic. We were having many years of increases. And then when the pandemic hit, there was a fear among investors that we can't take more risks. And unfortunately, women are seen as riskier investments. And so that has gone down, and we're continuing to see it go down over these next few years. So how do we get women more investment? Well, first and foremost, we need to be building a talent pipeline, and we need to be building an access pipeline. So we need women to know how to build companies, how to be founders, and how to be entrepreneurs from their earliest days. I don't know about you, but I didn't have any founder training. I went to school in a little town called Alcona Beach that most of you on here maybe saw driving by if you're on your way up to Wasaga Beach, but this wasn't an option for me. Being a venture capitalist wasn't an option for me. Learning about how to become one of these entrepreneurs was not an option. So building that talent pipeline from the earliest days. And then on top of that, we need to build the investor pipeline, because only 5% of venture capitalists on the other side of the table are women. So those 2 pieces are, this is generational work that needs to happen, but that's why we do conversations like this. And then to the broader point of this entire industry, this industry is a climate industry. The future of food is climate technology. Agriculture, specifically animal agriculture, represents almost 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions. So when it comes to the best bang for your buck, we've actually found that investing in plant-based protein, for instance, Boston Consulting Group was able to put together a study this summer that found that plant-based protein investments are 11 times more impactful for climate than electric vehicles. They're 3 times more impactful for green building and decarbonizing cement.
Yeah, it's startling, and I think that if more people understand the impact, then that's where it begins, right? You've got to really get that. You've got to get into the mindset and understand what the impact really is ultimately, and we got to drown out the noise of carbon generating businesses and bring these stories to the forefront, like you have in your book. So, in capturing these stories of these remarkable women, was there anything that surprised you or changed the way you think about the food industry as you were writing the book?
One of the things that I do quite a lot these days is actually work with a lot of people at the Cargills of the world. And I know lots of folks from Tyson, and working hand in hand with the biggest meat companies on the planet is one of the biggest changes I think I've made since writing the book. I've realized that the way that we feed 8 billion people is an incredibly complex system that is run by millions of people around the world that all just want to feed you. And if we are to reinvent that system, which is, nearly 100 years old, well, it's actually exactly 100 years old this year, we need all of those people on board. And we need to make sure that we are being seen as the future of food is just the evolution in how we eat. I don't believe that saying we're going to disrupt or end, meat is the right way to go about it. I think we're going to evolve the way that we make meat as we've done for hundreds of years. And so it's really about building allies, not adversaries.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, we're in such a time crunch, right? We don't have hundreds of years to fix this problem. So you've got to work with, the folks that are already in the industry. It is strategically a wise choice to make because they have the infrastructure and they have the resources. It's just a matter of, shifting mindset, shifting focus, and understanding what the impact of this can be, because it is economic too. I think, the issue of the feeling or the perception out there is that somehow this is going to cause an economic crash if we transition towards plants and away from animal-based products, that somehow our entire economy is going to crumble. And that's just my understanding is that's just simply not the case, that in fact we can have a healthier economy and a healthier environment using plant-based methods.
Yeah, and this is the exact same thing, that Henry Ford was told when he's rolling out a Model T versus the horses that we had all been using for hundreds of years prior. This is just a better way to get the same job done. And whether it's plant-based proteins, which we certainly know from a health perspective, we need to get more plant-based protein into folks, but even from an innovation perspective, these are massive, massive opportunities for new economies to be built. I do a lot of work in Canada and in the US, and, we've got the ability to be the leading plant-based producer for the planet. Canada is sitting on the most fertile land when it comes to fava, pea, all of these future plant proteins. And Prime Minister Trudeau knows it. He's put hundreds of millions of dollars into it. And so this can be part of the amazing Canadian story. It can be part of the American story. It can be part of how North America safeguards our food system for the next 100 years, because we do not have food security right now the way we are making it. We are heading for a really big crash. And then it's not just about the jobs of those folks, but it's about all of us then. We all go down then.
Yeah, absolutely. Innovation before austerity, right? And so if you want to get there and avoid austerity in the cliff, we need to be making changes now. We can't. This is a crisis now that we need to deal with. So the work that goes into a book like this is astounding. I mean, it's an incredible amount of dedicated time and research, and so I admire the hell out of you for that. I'm sure that there were stories that got left in the cutting room floor that you couldn't include. There's no question about that. I'm sure of it. But I'm just wondering about what was it about these particular women, these particular journeys that you needed to give them voice?
I focused on trying to find as many unique and diverse stories as I could, because we want to paint the future of food and the calling to reinvent the way that we eat, not in a monolithic manner, but in a manner that every single person can be a part of it. So it was really important to me that we didn't just have North American stories, because the majority of stories you do hear about are Americans and Canadians. And so I worked really hard to find folks in developing countries, to show their journeys and how they were able to make change. And I wanted to show a diversity of different career pathways. So, I've got a member of the European Parliament that's in there that grew up in a tiny village in Poland, all the way to, venture capitalists that are managing $500 million funds who grew up in Puerto Rico, go figure. And so the goal here is to show you can be a part of this industry in various different capacities, and you can do it from anywhere. It doesn't matter where you are born. You can all be a part of changing this system.
Yeah, for sure. I 100% agree. And I think what a difference one person can make. Each individual story on its own could be a book. And that's leads me to my next question, which is, what's next for Jennifer Stojkovic? Is there another book in there somewhere?
I've got a lot of projects right now. So, yes, there is another book for sure. I'm working on formulating what I would like to call, just very loosely, this is probably the first time I've spoken about it publicly, just not a conscious capitalism kind of update. I want to talk about to Millennial and Gen Z professionals, basically how we can learn to give a damn about making the world a better place, how we can do it through innovation, through entrepreneurship, and really build that kind of energy that I feel like is quite honestly maybe missing a little bit in some of the younger generations, because it's been a rough last few years. And I meet a lot of very deflated young professionals, and I want them to know that we don't have to accept this status quo. And so how we can kind of rebel by building a better system, I think that'll be the next, book topic. So I've got that. I'm hosting a big conference in less than 2 months in New York, the Vegan Women's Summit. We're expecting 1,000 people. So that'll be really big. And then I will be announcing a very large VC fund that I have been raising behind the scenes. And so we will be making a very big splash in the future of food in the next few months.
Well, I'm going to have to set up a Google alert for you. It sounds like you've got quite a bit going on, and I really do want to follow your progress, because I think what you've done in your career has been remarkable, and these stories, clearly the network that you've created and the voice that you've given them has been amazing. And I sure hope that our audience is able to pick up the book, and if they haven't yet, or if they haven't yet read it. So just couple more questions, and then we'll turn it over to the audience. So, obviously we have some alumna here. You're an alumna that has made incredible strides in your industry. I think if I was looking at you and, finishing up university, I'd be really inspired today. So what do you have in terms of advice to the audience today that are alumna or students, could be folks like me that are just aspiring entrepreneurs interested in science and tech? What advice do you have for them today?
The first thing I'm going to tell you, and I tell this to all the students that I speak to, is you need to build your network way earlier than you think, right? There's 2 things that anybody will tell you. I wish I had saved earlier, and I wish I had worked on building my network sooner. It is not too early to start building out a LinkedIn presence. It is not too early to start really networking. You can be 18 years old. You could be, in your first year at TMU. you need to start building that now, because that Rolodex, that's what my hallmark has been. You know, people say in the industry, just call Jenny, she'll know. Like, you need a celebrity, Jenny's got them. You need a CEO, Jenny's got them. You need a member of parliament, she's got them. Like, I have spent so much time building what I call the golden Rolodex. And I learned that from some really great mentors that I had before me. That is the number one piece of advice that I hope every single one of you take.
Yeah, for sure. And don't be, and what's the worst thing people can say, right? It's no, I'm not interested. And, you got to learn to ask, and that's the most important thing, right? It's that ability to get over that hump, to be able to reach out and take the initiative and just ask. And the worst thing somebody can say is no. And no harm, no foul.
Great advice. Like, anybody that is building a career that's listening, listen to what Marcia just said. You don't know. I cold email like A-list celebrities and have met them that way. Like, there is so much power in being that 1% of people that actually goes out on a limb to do something, because the other 99% don't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just make your ask clear. Make it realistic and clear. And our instinct is to help. We all want to help. The chances are that person has 15 minutes, will have coffee with you, and could change your world.
Yep. And be specific. That's actually the other point I would say. If you have an ask, be very specific. The busier the person, the less chance you have with them, unless you ask them for one specific thing.
Yeah, for sure. So before we turn it over to the audience, I'm really interested in knowing if there's a particular excerpt or quote from your book that you can leave us with today.
Oh boy. I would say, what is it? I want to think of this quote and say it correctly. The Chisholm one, where do not fear that a small group of people cannot change the world, for it is the only thing that ever has. And I just want you all to know that we have a canvas on this planet to decide how we're all going to live here. And there might be very entrenched large systems and industries that came before you, but they're all just run by people. It's all just people. And we have the ability to reinvent and rethink and reimagine and dream so much bigger for this planet.
Amen. Love it. Bravo. So I've got a question here from the audience, from Andrea, and her question is this: considering that greenhouse technologies and jobs often favor men, what are your thoughts towards a more inclusive transition to more sustainable food systems? Any ideas or success stories on including women in the green economy of food?
So this is what my organization VWS focuses on. We do a big conference on this. We do a pitch competition only for women founders in food. We've had about 1,300 women from 31 countries that have participated. We also do job networking that's specifically focused on connecting women with jobs in the future of food. We've connected probably 2,000 different professionals at this point. So I think it's very important for us to create these environments and these organizations that specifically address building that pipeline. And that is what my team at VWS focuses on.
Yeah, so on VWS, because I did some research on it. So if folks in the audience are interested in getting involved in VWS, it's just you just want them, they need to become members through the website. Is that what generally do you tell them as their first step?
Yeah, so you can subscribe to join our community. We've got a very large social media and email presence. We do one big conference every single year. So that's going to be the one in New York, May 18th to 20th. We're partnered with the mayor of New York City. It's going to be one of the biggest future of food summits in the entire world this year. We're expecting 1,000, probably 20% male attendees, by the way. So if there's any young male students in here or professionals that are interested in joining, it's about everybody. And so that would probably be our biggest thing to participate in throughout the year. As well, you can sign up to veganwomensummit.com/newsletter. newsletter, and that's how you get all the updates on everything that we're up to. Lots of other cool activities throughout the year.
Well, I'm getting the hook here. So I just want to wrap up and say the book is The Future of Food is Female, and the author is Jennifer Stojkovic. And I just want to say, Jennifer, I love the book. I've loved getting to know you in our chat today. And I just want to say thank you for the good work that you're doing. Keep it up. And happy to be able to connect with you today and be a small part of this.
Thank you so much.
And I'm sorry to be giving you the hook, because I think we've all been, sitting really enjoying and making the most of this fantastic conversation between the two of you. Marcia, you talked about setting up a Google alert. I'm going to set up Google alerts for both of you, because I really think that what you're doing is fascinating and for good. And I am so thrilled that you were able to join us here today to share your book, Jennifer and Marcia, to get this information and to share it with our alumni. So I do want to thank everyone for joining us today, specifically Marcia and Jennifer. Thank you so much. But to our alumni who've come in and shared their lunch hour with us over food, thinking about food, it really has been an inspiring and really fascinating discussion, and I so appreciate it. We will be sending out an email to everyone who's attended with a link so that you can share this conversation and share this discussion with others as well. And we'll have information about upcoming book talks. But in the meantime, thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. Feel free to connect
with me, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you later.